21st May LeetCode questions at matrix 0. So we are given a matrix, and what they're asking is that suppose this column has 0, right? So this entire column has to be converted to 0, and this row also has to be converted to 0 because we have 0 on this position, right? This is the 0 and this is also 0, so this entire column and this entire row has to be converted to 0. So this is the answer that we get. Now we can solve this simply using the naive approach, having two set, one set for row indices and another for column. So for row we can store 0 comma 2, and for column we can store 2 comma 3, because these are the indexes of columns that have zeros and these are the indexes of rows that have zeros. So when you traverse again, you just check the values, compare the values of I and j and whether they exist in these sets or not. You can call find method of these set in CPP, and you can check whether they exist or not, and based on that you can replace the element. You can decide whether to replace the element or not. But you can also do a constant space solution with a simple approach that you can use the first row as well as the first column in order to mark whether a particular row or column has to be converted or not. For example, you have 0 here, right? So the first value of this row is 4. You convert it into 0, and also the first value of this column, it's itself 0. So yeah, for this 0, the first value of the column is 2. So we convert it to 0, and the first value of this row is 1. We also convert this to 0, right? So we use this array to determine then which particular elements are to be converted to 0. For example, when we encounter 5, we check if the first value of this row is 0. No. The first value of this column is 0. Yes. If any one of these is 0, we convert it to 0. So same goes for this, same goes for this, right? You can see both are zeros. For this, the row value is 0. That is why we convert it. But this will create a problem for the row 1 and column 1. Now if you see, here it is 0, so we marked this 4 as 0, right? And this is also 0, so we marked this as 0. But this 3 now will convert it to 0. Why? Because the first value of the column of 3 is 0. That is why this 3 will consider that, okay, I have to be converted to 0. But this is not the case. So basically the problem of first row and first column arises. So when we traverse again, we do this kind of calculation only for this part of the array. We just don't care. We start from 1 1 in both the loops, right, rather than 0 0, in order to skip the row 1 calculations as well as the column 1 calculations. Then how is row 1 and column 1 updated then? Row 1 and column 1 are updated based on, before converting the entire array into this marked flagged array, what we do is we have two Boolean variables to check whether the first row as well as the first column has 0 or not. And they will contain, if they have 0, they will contain true value, otherwise they will contain false value. And these two flags are actually used to finally determine the value of the elements of row 1 and column 1, so that also we don't lose these elements. So if you look at the code, we have here two flags, right? And we traverse in the first column as well as in the first row to determine the value of these flags. Here you are replacing the elements of the first row. This is how we can do the first. This is how we can replace the first column value, and this is how we can replace the first row value, right? That is what you're doing. So our new array will be created here with flagged values. And this is where in this loop you start from 1 1, and basically what you do is that you convert the elements based on whether the first column has 0 or the first row has 0. For these indices, then you convert it to 0. Now we check the first row and first row 0 and first column 0 separately, right? Because we have to preserve the value of this 3, right? That is why we do this separately. If it was true, only then, if initially, before calculating our flagged array, if initially there were zeros in this first row, right? This 0 is also what we replaced, and this 0 is also what we replaced. So basically this 3 should not get affected by these zeros. That is why this first column has to be false, and that is why we do not convert this 3 into 0, and that is the approach of constant space.